You're listening to the Ask Drone U podcast. You ask, we answer your drone questions. Whether you're here to turn your passion into profit or you simply fly for fun, we're a community of learners and teachers who aspire to achieve greatness. We are
Drone U.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another interesting episode of Ask Drone U. My name is Paul, and as always, thank you for joining us. Today we have some really detailed information to go over regarding the Mavic Air 2. Many people are wondering, is this gimmick of 48 megapixels really going to provide nicer photos? Or is it simply just going to provide sharper photos? And as we know, sharpness does not always equate to detail. So to help us better understand what we can expect out of the Mavic Air 2 and maybe better understand if it's worth purchasing, we're going to bring in Vic Moss, award-winning photographer who actually has been taking photographs professionally, well, as long as I've been alive. You're welcome, Vic. So I have to say I'm very grateful for him to come in. He's going to edit some photos for us. He's going to show us what he is seeing. From the 12 megapixel images to the 48 megapixel images, what's the difference therein? And I haven't seen what he has put together just yet, but I'm really excited to see exactly what we get. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Vic Moss.
Yeah, hi, Paul. Thanks for this. As you mentioned, we're going to be jumping in and reviewing some files for the Mavic Air 2, not the Mavic 2 Air, the Mavic Air 2, that were provided to us by the Flying Dutchman himself, Mr. Haya Castellou from Drone XL. I do not have my bird yet. It is on order. They have not shipped yet. So once I get it, I'm going to dive in deeper a little bit more as well. Simply because when I'm usually reviewing files, raw files, I like to do it from the stuff I shot because I've got total control of the shooting environment and all that good stuff. But since DJI sent one to Haya, and he was kind enough to put links to his Google Drive in his article, which is linked below as well. So you can go ahead and download those and play with them. But since he was able to do that, I was able to get a hold of the images, both 48 and 12 megapixel captures. I've played with the 48 megapixel, processed them out, used Capture One for those of you who don't know. Played with them a little bit in HDR and Aurora HDR by Skylum. And I'll get into that a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about the files themselves, and then we'll go ahead and open up the 12 megapixel, which I have not looked at other than just importing them in already. And we'll kind of have a running commentary on that. Here we go. Let's get right into it. These are the 48 megapixel files individually, and then the HDR file itself. So here we go. So here we have the 48 megapixel captures from Haya. And this is the mid, obviously, then minus 2/3 here, right here, minus 1 1/3, plus 2/3, plus 1 1/3. That's just the AEB settings. I think he did these manually, though. I don't think the AEB on the Mavic Air 2 saves DNG files at 48 megapixel, but I'll double check that once we get into the much more deep review when I get mine. So let's take a quick look at this. Again, this is the mid exposure. And if you'll notice, we're going to lose a lot of highlights here, which is fine. This is in Capture. You can actually check to see if your highlights are blown. That's sort of to be expected. I personally would like them to be able to be brought back a little bit better. So let's pull both the high dynamic range sliders in, and you're still seeing an awful lot of burned highlights here. So let's go ahead and set that back to normal. Set that back to normal. And let's go to the deepest one here. We'll turn that off. Here is the darkest one. This is minus 1 1/3. And let's go ahead and turn on the exposure warning up here. And you'll notice right down here, we're getting a little bit of the red dots. Turn it off and turn it back on again. So you can see the red dots. That is not terribly surprising. I mean, you're just not going to get that kind of stuff in a DJI sensor, or most sensors for that matter, when you don't even have 2 full stops of range on that, which is fine. Now we can pull down the highlights here and the whites like we would if we really wanted to. And they're coming back a little bit, but not much. Again, that's not that big a deal when you're talking about this kind of imagery, when you're working with an image like this. So that's not too bad. Now you do notice, you run through these real quick here, you'll notice that these move quite a bit between exposures. Now Haya said that's because it takes about 2 seconds to process out the image. when you are shooting with 48 megapixels. So you've got about 2 seconds. You just kind of have to wait before you can do the next one, and you have to do it manually again, like I said. So when you're going to process this stuff out, which we have, but I've also done the HDR, but when you process this stuff out and you add it to an HDR like Aurora, you need to make sure that you click not only the auto align tool, but also the good deghosting tool, because this boat will show up 5 times. And actually it did show up 5 times when I didn't click it. It takes a while because A, these are very large images. B, these are very complex images, and C, it's got to work all that stuff together, not only lining things up, but also figuring out what's moved and get rid of which one you don't want moved, or the ones you don't want to see and the ones you do. So it takes a little bit longer, probably about twice as long as standard. But we're really not going to do that for this particular instance. Let's go ahead and go into here. Now these are the processed out images in HDR, and you'll notice this boat right here, he does move quite a bit. And so, but then when I went ahead and put it out in the HDR and processed it through Aurora, you'll notice not only does, it gets a little smaller, but it also then, it crops in quite a bit, just simply because it's trying to align everything, and they can't really interpolate stuff that's not there. Okay, let's open up the HDR image here in Photoshop. And here it is right here. Let's pull it up 100%. Since I'm not doing anything, we're going to go full screen here. I don't need to worry about my palettes. Full screen, 100%, that's not too bad. We're still going to be losing detail in here, but let's go to 100% now. And you'll notice it's actually pretty darn sharp. I'm pretty amazed at that. Now, you're going to have issues right here. You've got blocked up. It'd be nicer to have a little more detail in here. Now you could have done that in processing before you did the HDR, but you've got, you've got fairly decent, here you've got some really nice highlight detail. Here it's blown highlight detail, but in a situation like this, it's not that big a deal. One thing I really like and I noticed about this is for the 48 megapixel, this is a surprising amount of detail back here. The bridge is really cool. You can see the towers back here. I'm not quite sure what that is, an oil refinery or antennas or something. But even if you go to 200%, which you would never view something at 200%, it's surprising the amount of detail you get. You're starting to see a little bit, very little bit of a halo. You may not even be able to see this right here. And obviously it's getting a little noisy up here at 200%, but you're not going to see that. You're not going to be working on this. You're not going to print it at 200%. And you can interpolate it if you want. But overall, for 48 megapixel quad Bayer sensor or quad Bayer filter, there's a difference, which we'll get into here in just a bit. Not real deep though. This is a pretty good little image. I'm very happy with it. So let's go back here. Here is our other image, or our other images that we did. This is the second one. I went ahead and processed this out as well in HDR. Again, this is the same image, same process, 48 megapixel image. At full screen is not too bad. And then we go up to 100%. Again, you've got a surprising amount of detail for a 48 megapixel off of a 12 megapixel sensor, for lack of better words. That's not exactly the way it is, but that's not bad. You've got a little bit of noise right through here, which again is probably very difficult for you to see. I'm an anal guy when it comes to this kind of stuff, so it annoys me a little bit. But you've got incredible detail back here in the background. Again, you've got the bridge back here. You've got what I'm assuming is a little buoy right here. You've got those things as well right here. The cars in the parking lot, let's go up to 200%. Again, not surprising. Again, now you're getting some detail. At 100%, the grass is a little muddy, but it's a 1/2-inch sensor, folks, and a quad Bayer filter over it. So I'm fairly amazed at this, actually pleasantly surprised at this. Again here, so in the muddy area it's also a little bit, but I'm not quite sure what they're doing here, but maybe they're building a golf course or something. But anyway, so not bad at all. Let's do one more thing here. Let's go to here. We've got the 12 megapixel that he sent. I just processed these out. Here they are right here this morning. Again, just didn't do anything with the sliders at all on these. So let's go ahead and pull them up. And there you see there's not really any movement. So we'll go ahead and pull these up in Aurora and take a look and see how well that work at 12 megapixel. That should be those right there with HDR, because 12 megapixel is pretty much the native on this. We're going to go ahead and click auto align. I'm not going to worry about the deghosting here or ghost reduction, simply because there's not really any movement that I notice, and it's just for the sake of time. So it's going to go ahead and process these out in HDR, and we're not going to play with the slider. Well, we may play with the sliders a little bit to see what we can do. just to see exactly what it does. So here we are. Let's just pull it up to 100%. It's small now because we're looking at 12 megapixel, which is kind of funny. Got a little bit of movement. Actually, don't have movement there once it processed out. Fairly decent detail back here. We're pretty good back here in this with the bridge. No real haloing back there. Let me see if I go up to 200%, if it's going to give me any haloing. Yeah, a little bit right there, but again, that's 200%, so you're not going to do that. Let's play with some shadows real quick. Here's some pretty dark shadows right here. So if we start pulling these shadows back, what's it going to do? It's not too bad overall. Let's go back to 0 on this. Let's pull the blacks up since we really just want to play with the blacks. That's not too bad either. Highlights, let's go back down here. There's really not any blown highlights. So let's say we want to bring highlights back in. Highlight detail back in or blow it out a little bit. That's not too bad. Pull it up 100%. For an HDR image, again, from 16-bit TIFF, so you can do this in RAW. I do not like doing things like this in RAW. It's just my workflow. Not bad. Not bad at all. So let's save it. And we'll call this one Haya 3 because that's his third one. And then what we're going to do, let's see, we're not going to need Aurora anymore, so we'll go ahead and quit that. Don't save that. We already did. Let's go back to Capture and Haya in his rock starness. The only thing I didn't have for this review was a 12 megapixel and 48 megapixel of the same image. And so he went out this morning in obviously really cruddy weather and did that for us. So you guys can get a little bit of that. So thank you very much for that, Haya. Definitely, if you guys haven't subscribed yet, go to Drone XL and subscribe. But I'm going to go ahead and process both of these out just as is. Here is my recipe here, just at 100%, and we're going to call this Haya Comp. I already had that set in there. Process those out real quick, and then we'll pull them up in Photoshop and take a look and see what the difference is. Identical shots. Okay, that's done there, so we're going to just quit that for the sake of memory space. We're going to open both of those. Don't need anything with palettes, so let's go both of these up, and these are both full screen. You can see there's just a little bit of movement here. There's a car right there. But let's go 100%. Boom and boom. Obviously, there's the 12 and there's the 48. So the 48 is twice as big, just from the physics. Not exactly, but close. And let's pull up and look through some of the detail in the 48 megapixel image. And as I go through here, I'm just kind of taking a look. We probably could have played with the shadows a little bit, and we will do that when I get my Mavic 2 Air. I'm also going to shoot it at night because as you guys know, and gals, if you follow me at all, you know I love shooting at night. I love shooting at dusk. So that'll be a good tell, really, of how well this quad bear filter works. If you want to get into the quad, we're not going to get into that, obviously, like I said, but if you want to, go ahead and Google that. It is the filter. It's not a sensor. Same thing that kind of a lot of the phones do these days on the iPhone and the Google phones and all that good stuff. Just kind of still cruising through here, probably going too fast for y'all, sorry. Surprisingly good amount of detail. And here's our 12 megapixel. Obviously, this is a much smaller image. I'm not used to work with 12 megapixels because of the Mavic 2 Pro is a 20, but even this is decent detail for what it is. I mean, it's a 12 megapixel camera. Is it pro level? Yeah. Depends on what you want to use it for. I can see this, obviously, real estate, things like that, where you really don't need the quality on the size. But let's go ahead and go up to 200%. If you notice down here, this is the 12 megapixel at 200%. And it should be about the same size-wise as the 48 megapixel. Okay, there's that. Let's take a look at those cats, and let's pull it down here so you can see the caterpillar tractors in there, the backhoes. So that's the 48 megapixel. And look right here, and it looks pretty good. And it's not quite as sharp there. Let's look here at the tarp over the pile or whatever this is. Again, you've got a lot of noise, and it's not as sharp as the 12 megapixel. So, go back to both of these here. I like it. I didn't think I would. I honestly didn't think that 48 megapixel would be that big a deal, but it is. So, let's quit out of this, and I'll just pipe in, and let's talk about a conclusion on this thing. So hang on just a second, and I'll be right back. I'm having a little bit of trouble trying to figure out exactly how to get my head around what we just saw. Not necessarily from a technical aspect of it. We saw the technical side of things. that it actually worked out real well. But from a photographer's point of view, I was surprised, pleasantly for that matter, exactly just how well that quad Bayer filter worked on the Mavic Air 2. I really honestly didn't expect the files to look that good, the raw files to look that good, especially from a $1,000, sub $1,000 drone, if you get it with the Flymore bundle. I really wasn't expecting that. I am incredibly pleasantly surprised, so much so I'm tongue-tied, that it really went as well as it could. The tell was when Haya went out this morning. Again, thank you so much, Haya. You really are a rock star. Drone XL is going places with you at the helm. He went out this morning. I asked him, I said, I don't have a 12 megapixel and a 48 megapixel, like I said, to compare together the same shots. So he went out and did that this morning in that horrible, horrible weather, and sent them and uploaded them this morning so we could do this. And so I appreciate that tons, Haya. But it just the surprising difference between the quality of the 48 and the 12 is very similar, but I just wasn't expecting that. One of the things I really like too is that it runs off of the DJI Fly App, not the Go 4 app, but the Fly App, just like the little Mini here does. There he is right there. It runs off of that. So that gives me hope, and this is pure speculation on my part, and maybe DJI is going to say, Vic, why did you say that? But if they're going to have the Fly App run the AEB and the DNGs and that kind of stuff off the Air 2, maybe there's a firmware update coming on the Mini that will do that as well. Maybe not. Maybe there's the processing power is not there. I don't know. You've got some processing issues with the Mavic Air 2 where the 48 megapixel is raw, won't do AEB, those kind of things. So maybe it's a buffer issue, whatever, with the Mavic 2 Air. So maybe I'm just wishing. But again, these are very inexpensive drones, and maybe I'm expecting more from them than they're capable of, but it'd be nice, it'd be cool. So really, honestly, I'm very surprised. I'm really looking forward to getting a hold of mine. Can't wait for DJI Colorado email, say, hey Vic, here it is, come get it. Should be a couple weeks, in which case we're going to get a little bit deeper into the shooting of it, because I want to control the whole thing from the way the histogram looks when we do the AEBs. If I have to do manual exposures, how well it sits. I've gotten 8-second exposures out of my Mavic 2 Pro. Will I get that out of the Mavic Air? I don't know. We'll see. The Air 2. You never know. I like to push things. I like to know how far I can push a raw file before I break it. That way I can know what to expect when I'm shooting. It's just kind of how I do things. So it'll be interesting to find out. It'll be interesting to do. So in conclusion, I'm not going to give it a green light yet. I'm going to give it a almost green light, let's say. If you're not looking to get into the pro side of things, I definitely would give it a green light. It's not going to be the drone for everybody, at least based on the files. Until I actually get one in my hand, see how it flies, see how stable it is, see what kind of control I've got with it, all that fun stuff through the Fly App. Then I'll be able to tell you. If you show up on site with this with a cinematic shot, no, they're going to laugh you off set. But if you're shooting real estate, who knows? Maybe. Definitely, if you're just out, playing around and having fun up in the mountains here in Colorado or at the seashore in California, once we can actually go out and do things, the states become a little less locked down. We're getting a little better here in Colorado. But once we're able to do that, if you just want a nice little fun drone to play with, get some fun photography, get some fun videography, I guess. I have not seen video out of this. Not really my thing, but it'll be fun to review that as well once I do get mine. I see no reason not to get one at this point, other than the fact that they're not shipping yet. So no green light yet on either commercial or recreational, but darn close on both sides. So those are my thoughts, Paul. Thanks a lot for this, and back to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Vic, so much for that really, really fascinating information. I'm not sure if I really have a determination either way on how I'm going to move forward myself, but I hope this information from Vic gave you some clarity on what direction, well, you might need to move. Thanks again for joining us. If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a review. And don't forget to ask us a question, askdroneu.com. Anyway, that is going to do it for us today. My name is Paul. This is Ask Drone U.